going to Kansas City. If I could, I could, I could, I could. I'm going to Kansas City.
Hello, everybody. My name is Emmanuel Cleaver III.
And I'm Emil Cleaver, and welcome to another episode of Choppin It Up with the Cleavers.
Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check us out most places you get your podcast. Every Tuesday, we drop a new episode. So, for the first time, we celebrated Juneteenth as a federal holiday. And Juneteenth commemorates the day, June 19th, back when federal troops landed in Galveston, Texas, informing the slaves in Texas that they were no longer slaves. And this happened almost 3 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. And so we now celebrate it. It's a federal holiday. But I heard, I've had several conversations with some non-black folk who said they never even heard of June 19th until a year or so ago.
Yeah, well, why would they? And how could they have heard? There's a lot of black people that probably didn't know what June 19th is, because really it's a celebration of freedom in Texas.
Yeah, but it's something that cities all over the country have been celebrating for a long time. And we've had Juneteenth celebrations here in Kansas City for...
As Horace Peterson, who was revolutionary in bringing it here. We were one of the first cities to actually do it outside of those Texas cities here in Kansas City.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, and that may be true, but it still was celebrated. It did spread.
Yeah, it spread, but, you know, I have mixed feelings about Juneteenth. I mean, we're celebrating a day that should have never happened. I mean, we're celebrating white people freeing slaves. So I don't know if
we won't indict all the whites.
Okay.
So yeah, black people being free. So that's a celebration. So why wouldn't you? I don't understand.
We're celebrating that our master set us free.
We're celebrating freedom. I mean, freedom is something worth celebrating. We celebrate in this country July 4th, independence from Great Britain. Although black folk weren't free, which is why I have mixed feelings about July 4th.
Yeah, well, we weren't necessarily free on Juneteenth either. I mean, we were free as we weren't forced to work in the fields.
Right, that's true.
But
I mean, we're still working toward complete freedom, equality.
We ain't there yet. And I know that, the commercialization of it this year.
It's going to be commercialized.
Well, it's already commercialized.
I mean,
watermelon flavored drinks, and you see the party trays. See, and this is one of my problems. These big corporations are profiting from a holiday they had never heard of 2 years ago.
Well, that's what they do. I mean, they're in the business of making money at any cost. A lot of times at the expense of folk. That's why they have all the manufacturing overseas, because they're using forced labor, slave labor. Something I want to get into real soon. The fashion industry is probably the biggest human rights violator in human history. Most of the clothes that we get actually comes from slave labor. But we'll talk about that another time. We're talking about Juneteenth and how corporations are profiting from it. I haven't seen the watermelon flavored. I think I forgot
ice cream.
I know Walmart had something, and they took it off the shelf because they got criticized for it.
I can't remember what it was. It was something real bad.
It might have been fried chicken flavored ice cream or something.
Yeah, so
it was crazy.
And I see that they're selling like paper plates with the Pan-African colors on them. All types of party.
Folk gonna make money.
Yeah.
If
party
something
material
happens
with the Pan-African colors, which, in my opinion, I don't know if Walmart should be able to profit from something like that.
Well, here, if the corporations really want to do something for Juneteenth, I'm saying if they want to, instead of making profits, they can give some money to the Black College Fund, United Negro College Fund, They can give money to some of these civil rights organizations if they really wanted to do something. But like you said,
It's
they
just
probably
a profitable
don't.
thing. I know we're celebrating it all through the city. I did an interview with Channel 9 earlier this week, and they were asking, how should white people celebrate Juneteenth?
Give money to organizations. Did you say that? Give money to?
Yeah, I said yes. I was at the Bruce R. Watkins, so I'm like, yeah, come visit places like the Bruce R. Watkins, the American Jazz Museum, Negro Leagues Museum, Black Archives. Visit those institutions. As far as celebrating, that's another thing that's awkward. White people are celebrating it too.
Yeah, I mean,
It's their fault.
It's a federal. Yeah, we're not gonna indict everybody.
We're not going to indict them. Okay.
But
all profit
it's a federal
from it,
holiday.
though.
I mean, it's a federal holiday, so of course they're
Yeah.
going to enjoy the day off on Monday. Of course they're going to enjoy that.
Most people aren't going to celebrate it. They'll take that day off, but they're not
Yeah, they're
going
not going to celebrate
do
it.
any observing of it.
You think the Proud Boys are going to watch Roots in commemoration of Juneteenth or something?
Yeah, probably not. There's some Juneteenth special on TV last night. I didn't watch it.
That's. I mean, you was talking about how can whites, if that's what the question was asked. Who was it that you interviewed with?
Channel 9.
If they ask, how can you go back and watch some of these documentaries?
That's what I said. Watch documentaries. Educate yourself on what really happened in this history, in this country's history.
And really, you got to find out how it still affects us, how it is ingrained.
And maybe that's something that Juneteenth can bring out. Every year we need to push these issues. What needs to be changed? How do we need to get further away from being in a slave position? Because
a lot of institutions benefited from slavery. A lot of these Fortune 500 companies are beneficiaries of slavery.
These families.
Yeah, a lot of I have a friend who, as the United Methodist Church is splitting, he was like, the United Methodist Church needs to give money to all the black churches, and wanted to start doing some research, which churches benefited from slavery. Because we have some of these old churches, especially in the South, with a lot of money, what we call high steeple churches, silk stocking churches, a lot of wealth that goes back, endowments in the millions, tens of millions. Some of them have that because they had slave labor. They benefited from slavery. And so if you know that, what are you going to do about it?
Well, if you know that, then maybe you should give some of that money
That's the whole thing
that needed. But I mean,
that was the whole purpose. I mean, but how realistic is that happening on a large scale? There might be some that say, "Hey, okay, we benefited from slavery. What can we do?"
Yeah, I'm sure there's a few. There's a handful,
but there are a lot who like, okay, there's nothing we can do about it. That was our ancestors. Yeah, but you reaping the benefits.
But most people don't understand. Most white people don't understand how they reap the benefits, how their so-called white privilege
that's the problem.
Happens. They don't understand that. I mean, you can't, and you're not going to be able to convince them that they have white privilege.
Well, yeah, that's yeah, you're right, because they're going to be like, everything's open. And a lot of folk will quote Martin Luther King, judged by the content of your character, not the color of your skin. And so those who are against things like affirmative action, who are against any kind of equity, inclusion, diversity, they'll say that's not what Martin Luther King. And I'm like, now you distorting that. You're distorting what he said.
Well, I hate when those Republicans use Martin Luther King quote for their purpose, because they never even probably really studied Dr. King and don't know what he was standing for, obviously. And I know Dr. King I believe he was a Republican, but
well, yeah, back then most black people were Republicans until Kennedy. I mean, that's when the shift really happened.
Yeah. So, I don't know.
But
Juneteenth is here. I guess is here to stay. We get a day off. a Monday off, so I guess that's a good thing.
Well, the thing is, I would say let's use Juneteenth ought to be a time to learn, like you said, for those who had no idea that Juneteenth existed. Watch some documentaries, Eyes on the Prize. There are a bunch of them that go out there just to learn, but also to learn how systemic racism has really played a role in shaping America and how it's still there.
It's still in this city tough.
In Kansas City?
Kansas City is tough.
Why pick out Kansas City above all
Because this is where
cities?
I live. And
Okay.
this is where I experience systemic racism every single day.
So you say it's alive and well here in KC?
Yeah, I mean,
it's Missouri. So
they just had an article in the newspaper yesterday about water parks in Kansas City. Both of them are run by the same company, same
I only
organization.
know of two. Wait, okay.
And the one in North is beautiful and it's running and they have all these programs, but the one by your old church,
Oh yeah, that water park, please.
they're not, I mean, it's not open.
Yeah. Now, have you been there before?
No.
Nah. Yeah. Okay. So I didn't know that the one up. So you don't want to call the name. The one up north. I didn't know they ran the one in the south.
Yeah, they
that what
run
you're
both
saying?
of them. They run both of them. And one of them is beautiful.
Yeah, the one in the south is. The one that's over on Longview Road is terrible.
Yes. Yes.
mean,
That's systemic racism.
Yeah. Okay. I got you. Well, the school system, the way schools are set up, is systemic racism. And then you have gentrification taking place. So it goes on and on. So you want to do something, if you're not black and you want to celebrate Juneteenth, educate yourself, learn, go somewhere and discover how racism has played a role in this country. Speaking of racism, you want to see it's really, I think, becoming more prominent. I think, you had up until the late, maybe mid-'70s, maybe even not that late, where racism, you could see it. It was more than systemic. It was more than cultural. People voiced themselves. Yeah, blatant is the word. And then there was a period where you really only saw it systemic. You didn't, blatant racism wasn't mainstream.
It wasn't cool. It was politically incorrect to be a racist.
Even though racism was still alive and well. But of course, after Donald Trump, racism has become cool again, blatant racism. And so there's a story that happened in Cherokee County, Georgia, a school district where a black woman who was from Maryland, she was a middle school principal in Maryland. Her name was Cecilia Lewis. And her name is Cecilia Lewis. And she was offered a job by the Cherokee County School District to serve in a new role, administrator, that was focused on equity, diversion, and inclusion. And when the parents of that school district found out, they basically put on their hoods, their white sheets, and they went crazy.
They went crazy over this.
You can pull it up online. There are videos of school board meetings where these people are going crazy. And so they're sending her letters. They're sending a letter to the school board, to the superintendent, basically saying, we don't want this mess. Because they believed that the word diversity is just another word for critical race theory. So in their minds, she was bringing black stuff to Cherokee County School District.
And what's wrong with that?
Man, they don't want no black stuff. It's Georgia. It was, I forgot how many miles outside of Atlanta. So it wasn't too far. It's not too far from Atlanta. But in their minds, they're saying, this ain't Atlanta.
Yeah.
We don't want to hear all that. So they ran her out of town.
Ran her out of town.
She was like, I'm not dealing with this.
Yeah. Now, why would she? In a small racist town?
Yeah. I could see why she would take it like, okay, maybe I can make a difference. Maybe I can, educate, raise up generations of folk that understand how America has a serious race problem to promote equity, diversion, and inclusion. But the parents got so mad that she was like, I'm not going. And so the school board I think, eliminated that position. But then there was this large school board meeting where the board voted and approved 4-1 that they passed what was called the anti-CRT and anti-1619 project resolution.
They just do not want their children to know the history of this country.
So we talked about critical race theory. Most people are probably familiar with critical race theory. It really shows how race has played a role. It's not curriculum, but you're just telling the truth.
Yeah,
Talk about how race played a role in shaping American history. The 1619 Project is pretty much the same thing. It is a project really to highlight how race and racism have shaped American culture and institutions, but also to highlight contributions of black folk. So the Cherokee County School District in Georgia said that they said that won't happen. That's not going to happen here.
Nah, we're not going to do that.
But here's the thing about it. These parents in Cherokee County were so upset that Cecilia Lewis got another job somewhere else in Georgia. And they went to that school district
and ran her out of that school district. Man, that racism. Good old racism.
Man.
Good old racism.
So
a racist will just do anything. I mean, I don't understand why somebody would want to wake up in the morning and hate. Just hate. Just have that hate in your heart.
It's a brand new day. Let me see how I can ruin black people's lives. But, here's the thing. A lot of people don't say that. They just say, we don't want to hear it. I mean, I don't think a lot of the racism that we see, I bet you if you ask a lot of those parents, they're like, no, I'm not racist.
Well, of course they're not going to say it, but because they're cowards.
Well, because
racists don't admit they're racist,
but they
today.
don't think they're racist. Man. They don't believe. Some of them would tell you they don't believe they're racist. And they'll say the woman who cleans my house is black. The guy who does my gardening, he's.
And I'm sure that some slave owners believe that they weren't racist. They just thought that we're superior to these Negroes, and we're actually helping them out, giving them food and clothes.
They thought that. Absolutely, they thought that. But one of the parents at the school, and this is the narrative that's been pushing, said, we're not racist. It's not that we don't like black people. But the parent, I don't remember if it was male or female, basically said that critical race theory teaches that white kids are oppressors.
They are.
Well, see, that's why it's not being taught.
Okay, I'm just playing. They're not oppressors.
Yeah, no.
They're just beneficiary.
Well, the parents are saying that it teaches kids that you are a racist and that black and brown people being oppressed in this country is your fault. And that's not at all what critical.
It is their fault.
No, it's not their fault.
Yes, it is.
It's not
the kids' fault.
Yeah.
It's not the kids' fault. It's white people's fault.
But that's what parents are saying. That's why they're so against it, because the narrative, that the lie that's being pushed is that kids will sit up in the classrooms, and because I've had discussions with parents in Lee Summit to say they're going to teach that white kids are oppressors and that black kids are inferior. That's the logic they tried to get me to believe so that I would be on board. That they were telling me, well, it teaches that black kids are inferior. I'm like, no, it's not. That's a lie.
That's what somebody told you?
Yeah. We went to school with this person at Our Lady of Lourdes.
Really?
Yeah. And that's the lie that's being told, that they're going to tell black kids that that's not at all. You people need to read. We talked about that. Man, ignorance is contagious. J. Rue, the damager, when he said that, I mean, that
ignorance is contagious.
That's serious, because that's the lie that's being told. So they ran Cecilia Lewis out of Cherokee County. They ran her out of another school district, all because they didn't want anything about diversity, equity, and inclusion.
So I wonder if they even teach slavery anymore.
No. I told you I went to that banquet. It was a police banquet here in Kansas City, and they brought in a national journalist. and he told about Eli Whitney and the cotton gin, which we've all learned about in school, and so he said before then, the planters would have to pick the cotton. He said planters, not slaves. So that's what's being taught. That's what they want taught, that somehow these Africans somehow wanted to come over here to the United States, and they wanted to pick cotton. They wanted to do all of this.
Well, it doesn't matter. No matter how hard they try, they're not going to be able to get rid of history. There's too much evidence of history. 50 years from now, their way of thinking will hopefully be dying out.
But if we don't we have to stand strong. Black folk and allies, or it will be eliminated. You think it won't? I mean, it depends on how this struggle continues.
If they can dig up dinosaur fossils 1 million years ago, then I'm sure they can piece together all the evidence that white people owned black people. And you have a lot of, there's a group of, I don't want to call them Hotep thing, but black scholars who believe Eli Whitney did not discover the cotton gin.
Well,
the cotton gin was, put together by a black man. I mean, because they wanted to stop picking cotton. I mean, that's what.
Okay,
yeah, that's just the facts. I mean, why would a white man come up with a machine when he already has workers doing that work for him for free? So now they had to buy this expensive cotton gin. No, it was invented by a black man, and Eli Whitney just took credit for it.
Well, that's happened.
Yeah,
countless times.
Countless times. Black people invented that. We're tired of picking cotton. So there's that debate, and to call them planners, but I mean he's speaking to the police, so there's to say that there's systemic racism in the police department is an understatement, probably of the year of any police department.
Yeah, so I'm pulling it up. Yeah, it says that Eli was granted the patent, yet others contribute to its making, including a woman, Catherine Green, and African slaves.
Yes.
So,
yes.
booyah!
He has the patent. That's the key,
and that's all that. Yeah, and really that's all that matters, because that's what's going to get you the money.
Yeah,
that's what's going to bring you the fame. That's what's going to get you in the history books if you have the patent. But apparently there were others who contribute, because it does make sense.
Yeah.
That black folk, hey, how can we get out of this business of doing this from sun up to sundown? Because from what I understand, it's not easy.
Yeah, it tears your hands up.
But I mean, you talk about white folk taking, credit for what black people did. I mean, we saw, of course, we've seen that in music. That story goes on and on.
Yeah, and we should talk about that with the new Elvis movie coming out.
There's a new Elvis movie?
Yeah, it's supposed to be the definitive Elvis movies. There's never been a real definitive Elvis movies. So this is a brand new Elvis movie. The family is behind it. And as they're showing trailers, I'm surprised you haven't seen the trailer for it. As they're showing trailers for this, somebody on the internet, the internet is always going to dig up stuff. So they pull up this old clip of Ray Charles and Bob Costas, and Ray Charles was talking about how white people stole music, and Bob Costas was like, "Well, you have to admit some of them were pretty good. Like Elvis, he was good." Man, that was the wrong thing to say to Ray Charles. He said, "I know I'm gonna lose a lot of fans. You all should go look that interview up. I'm sure it's going to start circulating."
What did he say about Elvis?
I'm going to say if you give me a chance.
Come on, man. I mean, I want to hear it.
So he says Elvis was average. Elvis, all he did, he starts naming people that were shaking their hips way before. I mean, you all
we know. Everybody knows.
Elvis was an average musician. He was just an average musician. Nothing more, nothing less. He wasn't great in Ray Charles' eyes. He was not a great musician. He wasn't even great. He was just good at imitating, is what he said.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, this is not new information. I mean, we've known for years that Elvis would, he took the moves that he learned from black folk, and he took songs.
Yeah.
He took a lot of songs that he heard from black people and made a whole lot of money. So you think the story is going to say that?
I'm sure it's going to say that he
spent some time. Yeah, he spent some
inspired
time
by black people.
yeah.
I'm sure it's going to say that. It's not going to say he straight up just imitated black people, and that's how he became. I remember I was watching a documentary, and I think it was the Rolling Stones said how they first started making music. I think it was the Rolling Stones. They listened to a Chuck Berry song, and they got together and said, let's make a song like that.
Okay.
And that's, I think it was Johnny Be Good or something like that. And they did and you hear their version of that. Their
I've
very
heard
first song. And it's completely different than Chuck Berry. So, I mean, they did put their own twist to it. But in this documentary, it's clear, clear as day, they're saying we imitated Chuck Berry. That's how rock and roll started. But yeah, so the cotton gin is, that's just fabricated. Eli Whitney is just
he got the patent.
He's
That's
a
all.
white supremacist.
Yeah, because I doubt he shared some of that the proceeds.
No.
And he's in all the history books. He's lifted up. Everybody learns about him.
Yeah, everybody knows who Eli Whitney was. Everybody knows him. But nobody knows the real slaves who invented that machine.
Yeah. So
racism. So racism is here.
It's
here to
here.
stay.
Well, hopefully it's not here to stay because racism didn't always exist. So
it didn't.
I've heard people say racism will always be here, and I always say it won't.
You're right.
Because it hasn't it's relatively new in terms of human history.
Yes, it is.
Now, nationalism, people did, if you were
that's a different
Egyptian
thing. Yeah.
or you were Assyrian or whatever, you
Roman
respected,
or Greek or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. So that,
But in terms of color, that's a new thing.
That was a new
That's
deal.
new. That's new.
1500s, 1400s.
Queen Elizabeth, because she was so pale, and because being pale meant you didn't work in the sun, it meant you were elite. So if you had some pigmentation, you were considered, you must have been poor because you have to be outside. So when you have this interaction with these folk who are from Africa, who have dark skin, and it's the opposite of what is being told in parts of Europe.
Ignorance.
That you have to be pale.
Yeah,
that's what's
ignorant.
considered beauty. Then
she's ignorant.
But
if you read Pompey, who was a European historian scholar, who will even admit that the Egyptians far preceded any Europeans.
Didn't Herodotus too, the Greek historian? Didn't he do the same?
Yeah, they did, yes.
Because they weren't tripping off race.
Yeah, they
like
weren't
we
tripping
were.
off race. And in ancient Egypt, there wasn't racism, but it was just the opposite. The darker your skin was, if you were purple black, you were probably royalty. And then just regular black, you're nobles. But the lighter your skin was, meant the lower you were on the society's economic pole. So it was actually the opposite in ancient Egypt from the Europeans, but it wasn't racist. It wasn't a racist thing, or it wasn't a something where they put those people down. It was just how you said, if you're just how the Europeans thought, if your skin is dark, you must be poor.
Yeah, because you had to work in the sun, just like if you were fat. What we would call fat. What they would say, that's beauty, because it means you can eat all you want.
It means you're rich.
Yeah, and if you weren't, it meant you can't eat. It's just a different way of looking at things, but of course, American culture is largely shaped by Western European culture. I was reading an article yesterday that this is way off subject, but in pre-colonial Africa, the diet was largely vegetarian. It's the Europeans that introduced a lot of the meat and animals into Africa. And as we know, every African country was colonized with the exception of Ethiopia. With the exception of Ethiopia. Great stories. Why that's definitely on my bucket list.
Yes.
Ethiopia is the first nation that was declared a Christian nation. It was the first nation to declare itself a Christian nation. Now, Armenia, of course, they make that claim too, but because I read the Bible, I'm gonna have to go with Ethiopia because the story, if you all are familiar with the Bible, Philip, who was one of the first deacons of the church, he baptized and taught an Ethiopian eunuch. And church history says this Ethiopian eunuch is in the book of Acts, goes back to Ethiopia, and Christianity spreads. So Ethiopia, the first Christian nation, but it's also the only place that claims to have the Ark of the Covenant. The only place.
Yeah, I want to be there one day. I passed through it. I've been on Ethiopian Air, and we stopped in Ethiopia to catch the plane to Rwanda, but didn't get. We were supposed to. Man, I wish. Yeah, that's on the bucket list.
Absolutely.
Ethiopia is definitely on the bucket list.
Absolutely. And all the history, long history there in Ethiopia. The other news, moving away from America's biggest and first sin, and that is racism. And we talk about racism with black folk. I can't ever forget the indigenous people of this land because they were completely destroyed. I mean, they were wiped out. So we have to always honor the indigenous people of the United States. Did I tell you one time when I was in Columbus, Ohio, living in Columbus, Ohio, and I said, no, it was, I was an associate pastor somewhere, and the pastor, senior pastor at the time, he said, used the language, what do we call Americans? What's the name we used to use for the natives? Native American. So he said Native American, and I remember this white gentleman getting upset. He was like, my grandparents were born here. I'm a Native American as well. Why are they called Native American? I'm like, because they were here long before your grandfather and long before anyone else in your family was here. I don't know why you're going to get upset about that. That makes no sense. That you're mad that they're called Native American, but you can't be called Native American.
That's called
yes, it is
white privilege.
That's called superiority. That's beyond privilege. That's white superiority. Yeah. But moving to other news, the big news that happened last week, Boxing Hall of Fame.
In the NBA Finals.
Well, yeah, the NBA Finals, Golden State won. Steph Curry's why I have him number 2 on my list of greatest point guards of all time, but he can move up, man. Dude, I mean, he can move up. I know a lot of people will get on him like he's too nonchalant, that he doesn't play hardcore defense and all that. And I agree, he can play better defense. I have seen him lock folk down when he wants to. But dude still won 4 championships, so he's doing something.
Yeah, he's doing something.
He's doing something.
Has to be considered the greatest shooter.
Oh, not yet. To me, I don't even think that should be a debate. I mean, stuff he did in Game 5 was ridiculous. But yeah, Golden State, mad props. Of course, another debate I heard, okay, some were saying, okay, well now you got to say he's better than LeBron James because he won 4 rings without as many tries as LeBron. I don't know about that because getting to the NBA Finals is a big deal. So I know LeBron has lost in the NBA Finals several times, but man, how many folk can say they got there that many times?
Yeah, I'm not going to put him ahead of LeBron.
No, I'm not either.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit too much.
But that's the debate out there. No. But they got a young team, so man, they could easily be back next year because they got some youngsters that can ball. But that was big news. But the other big news, Boxing Hall of Fame inductees. So some of the greats of all time, Roy Jones Jr., who was voted the best boxer of the 1990s. And then Bernard Hopkins was inducted. They fought each other twice. Bernard Hopkins fought until he was in his 50s.
He was a champion at 50.
Yeah.
Heavy,
Light heavyweight.
champion.
Dude was one of the smartest fighters. I mean, he could make adjustment. He knew how. I mean, he would watch a fighter and pick a plan and just pick him apart.
Pick him apart.
He wasn't faster. He doesn't have a lot of power.
He was not an athletic person.
Yeah, but he is smart.
And has probably one of the best conditioned
Absolutely.
Boxers ever.
So he made it. Floyd Mayweather was inducted, and people made fun of him because he cried at his speech. I mean, you work something your whole life for, and you get it, man. I don't understand why
People don't like him.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, he
Yeah.
has a trouble. He has his problems.
Yeah.
And I don't condone any of his acts out of the ring, but in the ring, I mean, it's hard to go against.
He was a master. Not my greatest. Well, we'll do maybe one day the greatest boxer of all
got
time.
to.
But James Toney also, wasn't he inducted?
Yep.
James Toney. James Lights Out Toney.
Ali.
One of my favorite fights of all time, James Toney against Vasily Girov. That was, I mean, they fought in a phone booth. And James Toney in the last few rounds he showed some heart. I mean, dude, that was one of my favorite fights
A
of
lot
all
of people
time.
probably don't know who James Toney is unless you're a real big fight fan. He was the one who busted up Evander Holyfield's eye. Remember when he had that big old knot on his face? I mean, it was like a basketball on Evander Holyfield's face.
Yeah. James Toney was a middleweight champ, cruiserweight champ. He was a beast. So we thought in recognition of those being inducted, some of the greatest inducted into the Boxing Hall of Fame, we would do the best boxing matches so far in 2022. The best boxing matches so far in
who's going
2022.
first?
It's my turn.
All right.
So number one,
Don't start.
I always do that. Number five on my list is Tyson Fury versus Dylan White. Tyson Fury, the recognized best heavyweight in the world,
Man.
the Gypsy King.
You look at him, he won't look like it.
But he's fun to watch. He's doesn't look like a heavyweight champion. He's not real athletic, and he doesn't have a lot of power, but he knows how to fight.
Yeah, he just knows how to fight.
He knows how to fight. So he and Dylan White fought. Of course, Tyson Fury won 6-round KO. Tyson Fury. I don't know if he's going to fight Deontay Wilder next.
No, Deontay Wilder. You mean Joshua?
But Joshua lost his last fight, didn't he?
Well, he was talking about fighting Francis Ngannou.
Yeah,
I don't know. If
that's a
gonna
money
happen.
fight. That's a money fight. But yeah, so Tyson Fury, Dylan White, number 5. Number 4 was Gervonta Tank Davis against Rolando Romero. This was for the WBA lightweight champ.
Tank Davis
And-
is a beast.
Yeah. He got him. Tank got him in the 6th round. I think it was the 6th. But here's
Romero
the thing.
was-
I had Rolando Romero winning the fight. He
lot of
wasn't
people did.
beating him up. Yeah, he wasn't beating Gervonta up by no means, but he was, in my book, he was winning the fight. But Gervonta has power, and then Rolando just jumped in.
Yeah, he was a bad
jumped
move.
in.
Yeah.
So
He should've
even
kept
Tank
fighting how
Davis
he was
noticed
fighting.
it. Gervonta even said he jumped in like Pacquiao did
And
with
he
Juan
ended up
Manuel
like
Marquez.
Pacquiao.
Yep. And
Juan Manuel Marquez, he was inducted too.
okay, and he deserved. Manuel Marquez was one of the great fighters. So Gervonta Davis, Rolando Romero is my number 4. Number 3, the one that many people had as the pound for pound best boxer today, Canelo Alvarez.
Yeah.
He moved up in weight to
Bad
take
idea.
on Dmitry Bivol for the WBA light heavyweight championship. And Bivol won.
Yeah.
He won.
Bivol became
too
a star
long.
that night.
Yeah, because although he was the champ, nobody knew him.
Most people who
Casual
weren't
boxing fans.
Yeah, casual boxing fans did not know who he was until after that night. He put on a clinic.
He was good. I mean, he didn't beat. I don't think. I was talking to my son. He thought that Canelo got beat down. I don't think he got beat down. He lost the fight, but he didn't get beat down.
He didn't get beat down.
But Bivol was just too long and too big because
big.
the punches
That was the thing.
that others would have been running from, Bivol wasn't. I mean, it didn't affect him.
Yeah, Canelo ain't no Roy Jones.
Yeah, but he's a lot shorter. You think about his frame, he really doesn't belong in light heavyweight.
No, he doesn't.
At 5'9".
No way he can be successful.
So number 2 was a great fight. Errol Spence Jr. versus
Spence.
Yeah, Errol. A lot of people call him Earl, but his name
Errol Spence.
Errol Spence Jr. against Yordenis Ugas. And it was a good fight.
Man.
Spence stopped him in the 10th round.
Spence got caught.
He
was slipping.
no.
He was slipping for some reason when he got caught like that.
Yeah. Ugas was tough.
Yeah.
It was a good fight. The ref actually stopped it because of Ugas's right eye. But Spence was killing him with those body shots. Spence was killing him.
Master.
And, of course, the biggest fight that boxing could possibly have right now is Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence.
Yes.
We can't wait for that. That's like,
Might not happen. He's talking about fighting one of the Charlo brothers. Terrence Crawford is if Errol doesn't sign it.
Yeah. That would be, that's another big fight if he fights one of the Charlos. But speaking of the Charlos, my number 1 fight so far this year is Jermell Charlo against Brian Castano. And the reason why this was a big fight, this was their second one. The first one was a draw.
Yeah.
And it was a big fight because this person, the winner of the fight, would be crowned the first ever undisputed 154-pound champ. So in boxing, for those who don't know, there are 4 major belts. There used to only be one back in the day. If you were, I think, what was the IBF was the first?
Was it? I thought it was the WBC.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. You're WBC. But now there are 4 major belts. So you can be in one division and there can be 4 champions, 4 recognized champions.
4 lightweight champions, 4 heavyweight champions.
All that. Which is, this is off subject, but I remember Shannon Sharp and Floyd were having a debate, and Floyd was explaining why he thought he was the greatest fighter of all time. And he said, because I beat more world champions. And I wanted Shannon Sharp to say, he never said it, but I wanted Shannon Sharp to say that's because there are more champions today. Yeah. There are more belts. So that argument, Floyd, isn't really good. Not only are there more belts, there are more weight classes. Yeah. So that's not a good argument. You can make the argument, Floyd, that you're the greatest, but that one, I'm not buying that one. So there's the IBF, WBA, WBC, WBO. And Jermell Charlo, it was a tough fight. Castano kept coming forward, but Jermell Charlo stopped him in the 10th to become the first ever undisputed champion at 154 pounds. That's my list.
Okay, well, my list has everything that you had on there, just different orders. So number 5, I have Canelo and Bivol. Obviously we told why that was a big fight. Canelo was the pound-for-pound best fighter in the world, moved up a weight class to a great fighter, but kind of unknown to the masses. And he went to school. Bivol was too big. Bivol was a good boxer. He outboxed him, but he was too big.
Yeah.
He was just too big for him. So that's number 5. Number 4, Tyson Fury, Dylan White. So that was a good fight. Tyson ended up knocking him out. Was it the 6th?
Sixth
round, yeah. Like we said, Tyson, he's a gypsy. And if you know anything about gypsies were bare knuckle fighters. And I believe his father.
Yeah, his father was a fighter.
So he comes from a family of fighters, and he can fight. So he dominated this fight and ended it with an exclamation point. Number 3, Tank Davis and Romero. Another good fight. Romero was coming on. I think he just got a little bit too anxious.
Got too happy.
He was winning the fight.
And he wants an immediate rematch.
Yeah. And I can understand why Tank doesn't want it. You got knocked out. So, but I understand why Romero does because he was winning.
Right.
But, you got knocked out. You got to be a smart boxer. That's what we were talking about. Bernard Hopkins. Got to be smart in there. Number 2, Errol Spence versus Ugas. How you pronounce it?
I think Ugas. I've heard both. Ugas.
Yeah, Ugas caught him. Errol Spence was he's one of the top pound for pound fighters, and he got caught in one of those rounds. He was looking away and he got popped, man. It was a strange deal.
Yeah, I forgot what happened when he did that.
Something that he thought that it was a stop, but he got caught, and luckily the round was almost over. But he got caught, but he came back. You know, he's a great fighter, great mind,
tough
willpower.
Came back after a terrible car accident.
That's why I say he has that tough mind. But yeah, that was a good fight. He came back, knocked him out, and won. Number one, same as you, Charlo and Castillo. Castano, I'm sorry, Castaño.
Yeah, Castaño, really.
Castaño.
I was saying Castaño. I was saying it the American way.
Yeah, Castaño. So it was a good fight. It was for all the marbles. I mean, he made history that night.
Yeah, he did.
Jarmel, he has a brother named Jermel. They're twin brothers.
Jarmel. Jermel is the one who won it.
Jermel and Jarmel. I don't know why their parents named it that.
I know it's too close.
It's too much.
It's
too much
close.
Alike. But
hey,
they're
both
champions.
good fighters.
They're both champions. And they're friends with Errol Spence.
And they're looking for book fights. They want big fights now.
Yeah, and there's a possibility that he might fight Terrence Crawford next, which would be a great fight, a big fight. Terrence Crawford would have to move. Well, he said he would move down in weight to fight him. But so hopefully the Errol Spence, Terrence Crawford will fight. But that's my top five.
Got to be leery of dropping down in weight, man.
Yeah, I would too.
You got to be leery about dropping down. A lot of people, I mean, yeah.
I remember when Chad Dawson did it against Andre Ward.
Yes, and I was like, I mean, I knew Andre Ward was good, but yeah, he just looked bad.
Him out.
I mean, Chad Dawson looked bad at that weight.
Yeah.
Because you're already cutting for the weight you're at, and then you're going to cut even more. If you all don't know, boxers, MMA fighters, if they fight at 155, that means they're cutting about 20 pounds.
They probably walk around at 175.
Yeah.
If they fight at 155, they probably walk around at 175.
Probably. I know. I mean, yeah, one of my coaches, he fights at 155. He walks around at 175.
Yeah, so they do that to gain an advantage, but it doesn't give them much an advantage if everybody does it.
Yeah. Except though, but there are some who are even bigger. They might walk around at 185.
Yeah. There's more people that some walk around at 190.
And so when they get back into the ring after they rehydrate,
they're a lot bigger.
But it's also dangerous doing that, cutting too much weight. But that's the list. There's some other great fights that we're hoping going to happen in the future. We're going to also, as two big combat sports fans, we're going to do some lists. Greatest MMA matches this year, greatest fighters, all of that. But check us out every Tuesday, Chopping It Up with the Cleavers.
We're going to have to bring the guest on next week. We're going to have to move to a different location and bring this guest on before his show is over.
Yeah, so we got a guest, an actor. It'll be a surprise. We'll let you know once we secure it. We know an actor. Knowing him pretty well.
So yeah, we're gonna bring this actor on the show. He has a new project.
Several new projects actually.
Yeah, so he's gonna talk about these projects, and we'll have a list for him to join in on. Anytime we have a guest, they're gonna be on the top five. They're gonna do the top five.
They got to give us the top five every Tuesday. New episode, Chopping It Up with the Cleavers. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Yes.
Check us out most places you get your podcast.
We'll see you next week.
Peace.
I come, that's where I'm from, yeah. I say I'm going.